Chapter 24. Out in the country, at the Belmont Academy, I went to work in a small, perfectly appointed steam laundry. Another fellow and myself did all the work from sorting and washing to ironing the white shirts, collars, and cuffs, and the fancy starch of the wives of the professors. We worked like tigers, especially as summer came on and the academy boys took to the wearing of duck trousers. It consumes a dreadful lot of time to iron one pair of duck trousers. And there were so many pairs of them. We sweated our way through long, sizzling weeks at a task that was never done. And many a night, while the students snored in bed, my partner and I toiled on under the electric light at steam mangle or ironing board. The hours were long, the work was arduous, despite the fact that we became past masters in the art of eliminating waste motion. And I was receiving $30 a month and board, a slight increase over my coal shoveling and cannery days, at least to the extent of board, which cost my employer little, we ate in the kitchen, but which was to me the equivalent of $20 a month. My robuster strength of added years, my increased skill, and all I had learned from the books were responsible for this increase of $20. Judging by my rate of development, I might hope before I died to be a night watchman for $60 a month, or a policeman actually receiving $100 with pickings. So relentlessly did my partner and I spring into our work throughout the week that by Saturday night we were frazzled wrecks. I found myself in the old familiar work-beast condition, toiling longer hours than the horses toiled, thinking scarcely more frequent thoughts than horses think. The books were closed to me. I had brought a trunkful to the laundry, but found myself unable to read them. I fell asleep the moment I tried to read, and if I did manage to keep my eyes open for several pages, I could not remember the contents of these pages. I gave over attempts on heavy study, such as jurisprudence, political economy, and biology, and tried lighter stuff, such as history. I fell asleep. I tried literature and fell asleep. And finally, when I fell asleep over lively novels, I gave up. I never succeeded in reading one book in all the time I spent in the laundry. And when Saturday night came and the week's work was over until Monday morning, I knew only one desire besides the desire to sleep, and that was to get drunk. This was the second time in my life that I had heard the unmistakable call of John Barleycorn. The first time it had been because of brain fag. But I had no overworked brain now. On the contrary, all I knew was the dull numbness of a brain that was not worked at all. That was the trouble. My brain had become so alert and eager, so quickened by the wonder of the new world the books had discovered to it, that it now suffered all the misery of stagnancy and inaction. And I, the long-time intimate of John Barleycorn, knew just what he promised me. Maggots of fancy, dreams of power, forgetfulness, anything and everything save whirling washers, revolving mangles, humming centrifugal wringers, and fancy starch, and interminable processions of duck trousers moving in steam under my flying iron. And that's it. John Barleycorn makes his appeal to weakness and failure, to weariness and exhaustion. He is the easy way out. And he is lying all the time. He offers false strength to the body, false elevation to the spirit, making things seem what they are not and vastly fairer than what they are. But it must not be forgotten that John Barleycorn is protean. As well as to weakness and exhaustion does he appeal to too much strength, to superabundant vitality, to the ennui of idleness. He can tuck in his arm the arm of any man in any mood. He can throw the net of his lure over all men. He exchanges new lamps for old, the spangles of illusion for the drabs of reality, and in the end cheats all who traffic with him. I didn't get drunk, however, for the simple reason that it was 1.5 miles to the nearest saloon. And this, in turn, was because the call to get drunk was not very loud in my ears. Had it been loud, I would have travelled 10 times the distance to win to the saloon. On the other hand, had the saloon been just around the corner, I should have got drunk. As it was, I would sprawl out in the shade on my one day of rest and dally with the Sunday papers. But I was too weary even for their froth. The comic supplement might bring a pallid smile to my face, and then I would fall asleep. Although I did not yield to John Barleycorn while working in the laundry, a certain definite result was produced. I had heard the call, felt the gnaw of desire, yearned for the anodyne. I was being prepared for the stronger desire of later years. And the point is that this development of desire was entirely in my brain. My body did not cry out for alcohol. As always, alcohol was repulsive to my body. When I was bodily weary from shoveling coal, the thought of taking a drink had never flickered into my consciousness. When I was brain wearied after taking the entrance examinations to the university, I promptly got drunk. At the laundry, I was suffering physical exhaustion again, and physical exhaustion that was not nearly so profound as that of the coal shoveling. But there was a difference. When I went coal shoveling, my mind had not yet awakened. Between that time and the laundry, my mind had found the kingdom of the mind. While shoveling coal, my mind was somnolent. While toiling in the laundry, my mind, informed and eager to do and be, was crucified. And whether I yielded to drink, as at Benicia, or whether I refrained, as at the laundry, in my brain the seeds of desire for alcohol were germinating. Chapter 25. After the laundry, my sister and her husband grub-staked me into the Klondike. It was the first gold rush into that region, the early fall rush of 1897. I was 21 years old and in splendid physical condition. I remember at the end of the 28-mile portage across Chilkoot from Dyea Beach to Lake Linderman, I was packing up with the Indians and outpacking many an Indian. The last pack into Linderman was 3 miles. I back-tripped it 4 times a day, and on each forward trip carried 150 pounds. This means that over the worst trails, I daily traveled 24 miles, 12 of which were under a burden of 150 pounds. Yes, I had let career go hang, and was on the adventure path again in quest of fortune. And of course, on the adventure path, I met John Barleycorn. Here were the chesty men again, rovers and adventurers, and while they didn't mind a grub famine, whiskey they could not do without. Whiskey went over the trail while the flour lay cached and untouched by the trailside. As good fortune would have it, the 3 men in my party were not drinkers. Therefore, I didn't drink save on rare occasions and disgracefully when with other men. In my personal medicine chest was a quart of whiskey. I never drew the cork till 6 months afterward, in a lonely camp, where, without anaesthetics, a doctor was compelled to operate on a man. The doctor and the patient emptied my bottle between them and then proceeded to the operation. Back in California a year later, recovering from scurvy, I found that my father was dead and that I was the head and the sole breadwinner of a household. When I state that I had passed coal on a steamship from Bering Sea to British Columbia and travelled in the steerage from there to San Francisco, it will be understood that I brought nothing back from the Klondike but my scurvy. Times were hard. Work of any sort was difficult to get, and work of any sort was what I had to take, for I was still an unskilled labourer. I had no thought of career. That was over and done with. I had to find food for 2 mouths besides my own and keep a roof over our heads. Yes, and buy a winter suit, my one suit being decidedly summery. I had to get some sort of work immediately. After that, when I had caught my breath, I might think about my future. Unskilled labour is the first to feel the slackness of hard times, and I had no trades save those of sailor and laundryman. With my new responsibilities, I didn't care to go to sea, and I failed to find a job at laundrying. I failed to find a job at anything. I had my name down in 5 employment bureau. I advertised in 3 newspapers. I sought out the few friends I knew who might be able to get me work, but they were either uninterested or unable to find anything for me. The situation was desperate. I pawned my watch, my bicycle, and a mackintosh of which my father had been very proud and which he had left to me. It was and is my sole legacy in this world. It had cost $15, and the pawnbroker let me have $2 on it. And, oh yes, a waterfront comrade of earlier years drifted along one day with a dress suit wrapped in newspapers. He could give no adequate explanation of how he had come to possess it, nor did I press for an explanation. I wanted the suit myself. No, not to wear. I traded him a lot of rubbish, which, being unpawnable, was useless to me. He peddled the rubbish for several dollars, while I pledged the dress suit with my pawnbroker for $5. And for all I knew, the pawnbroker still has the suit. I had never intended to redeem it. But I couldn't get any work. Yet I was a bargain in the labour market. I was 22 years old, weighed 165 pounds stripped, every pound of which was excellent for toil, and the last traces of my scurvy were vanishing before a treatment of potatoes chewed raw. I tackled every opening for employment. I tried to become a studio model, but there were too many fine-bodied young fellows out of jobs. I answered advertisements of elderly invalids in need of companions. And I almost became a sewing machine agent on commission without salary. But poor people don't buy sewing machines in hard times, so I was forced to forgo that employment. Of course, it must be remembered that along with such frivolous occupations, I was trying to get work as wop, lumper, and roustabout. But winter was coming on, and the surplus labour army was pouring into the cities. Also I, who had romped along carelessly through the countries of the world and the kingdom of the mind, was not a member of any union. I sought odd jobs. I worked days and half-days at anything I could get. I mowed lawns, trimmed hedges, took up carpets, beat them, and laid them again. Further, I took the civil service examinations for mail carrier and passed first. But alas, there was no vacancy and I must wait. And while I waited, and in between the odd jobs I managed to procure, I started to earn $10 by writing a newspaper account of a voyage I had made, in an open boat down the Yukon of 1,900 miles in 19 days. I didn't know the first thing about the newspaper game, but I was confident I'd get $10 for my article. But I didn't. The first San Francisco newspaper to which I mailed it never acknowledged receipt of the manuscript, but held on to it. The longer it held on to it, the more certain I was that the thing was accepted. But here is the funny thing. Some are born to fortune, and some have fortune thrust upon them. But in my case, I was clubbed into fortune, and bitter necessity wielded the club. I had long since abandoned all thought of writing as a career. My honest intention in writing that article was to earn $10. And that was the limit of my intention. It would help to tide me along until I got steady employment. Had a vacancy occurred in the post office at that time, I should have jumped at it. But the vacancy did not occur, nor did a steady job. And I employed the time between odd jobs with writing a 21,000-word serial for the Youth's Companion. I turned it out and typed it in 7 days. I fancy that was what was the matter with it, for it came back. It took some time for it to go and come, and in the meantime I tried my hand at short stories. I sold one to the Overland Monthly for $5. The Black Cat gave me $40 for another. The Overland Monthly offered me $7.50, pay on publication, for all the stories I should deliver. I got my bicycle, my watch, and my father's Macintosh out of pawn and rented a typewriter. Also, I paid up the bills I owed to the several groceries that